Today, we're jumping into one of the most famous ideas in all of psychology. It's basically a roadmap for your entire life, and it was designed by a guy who spent his own life trying to figure out who the heck he was. So let's explore his map of you. I mean, it's the ultimate human question, right? From the second we're born to our very last days, we are constantly evolving. We're building the person we are. But you have to wonder, is there some kind of pattern to it? A predictable path that we all follow? Well, a psychologist named Erikson thought so. He was one of the most influential thinkers on this whole topic, and he developed this really powerful theory that acts like a map, charting out the key challenges we all face on the journey to becoming, well, ourselves. Okay, so before we dive into all the different places on this map, we first got to understand the rules of the road. What's the engine that actually drives this whole process? Erikson called it the epigenetic principle. Now, that sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Our personalities unfold in a set sequence, kind of like a flower blooming. And each stage builds directly on the last one. Think about it like building a house. You can't put the roof on before you've built the foundation and the walls, right? Our success in one stage completely depends on how we handled all the stages that came before it. And here's how it actually works. At every stage, we face what he called a psychosocial conflict. It's like a big tug-of-war happening inside us. Each of these conflicts has its moment, an ideal time for us to figure it out. If we manage to navigate it well, we come out the other side with a new strength, a new virtue like hope or willpower. But if we don't, that unresolved tension can create problems that, follow us into the next stages of our lives. So now that we've got the rules down, let's finally look at the map itself. These are the 8 great conflicts that Erikson believed really define what it means to be human. This chart right here lays out the entire journey. As you can see, it starts in infancy and takes us all the way to our later years. Each row is a unique stage of life, and each one is defined by a central tug-of-war, like trust versus mistrust for a baby, or identity versus role confusion for a teenager. Getting through each one successfully is the key to building a healthy personality. So we're going to use this as our guide. All right, let's actually walk through this map. We're going to see how this whole journey, from learning to trust the world as a tiny baby to finding a sense of integrity in our final years, really unfolds, one stage at a time. So it all starts here. The very first conflict is trust versus mistrust. As a baby, your whole world boils down to one question. Is this a safe, reliable place? If your needs for food and comfort and care are met, you develop this fundamental sense of trust. If they're not, mistrust starts to take root. And a healthy resolution to this first big challenge, it gives us our first great strength, hope. Now, as we grow into toddlers, the challenge changes. It becomes autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is when we first start learning to do things for ourselves, to walk, to talk, to control our own little worlds. It's that classic, I can do it myself phase. When a kid is encouraged to be independent, they develop the virtue of willpower. Then in the preschool years, the conflict shifts again, this time to initiative versus guilt. This is when kids start making up their own games, trying on different roles, and really exploring their creativity. They're taking initiative. If that exploration is supported, they develop a sense of purpose. But if it's criticized or controlled too much, guilt can really start to set in. Once we hit school, the new conflict is industry versus inferiority. Now, all of a sudden, we're being asked to finish tasks, follow rules, and get results. And for the first time, we're seriously starting to compare ourselves to our friends and classmates. When we succeed, it builds a sense of competence, but struggling over and over can create a really lasting feeling of inferiority. Okay, we're going to pause here for a second, because this next stage was the absolute heart of Erikson's work. And that's probably because of his own life. He struggled with not knowing his biological father and always feeling a little out of place. So for him, this next one, this was the big one. And here it is, the central conflict of our teenage years, identity versus role confusion. The big question is, simply, who am I? Teenagers are trying on different hats, trying to figure out their values and what path they're supposed to take in life. When you get through this crisis successfully, you gain fidelity, which is really about being true to yourself. So once you have a clearer sense of who you are, the next challenge pops up in young adulthood: intimacy versus isolation. Basically, can you form deep, committed, vulnerable relationships with other people? If your own identity is still a little shaky, this can feel terrifying, and that can lead to isolation. but navigating it successfully gives us the incredible virtue of love. Then, in middle adulthood, the conflict becomes generativity versus stagnation. The question now is, am I making my mark on the world? This is all about contributing to the next generation, whether that's raising kids, mentoring people, or just creating things that will outlast you. The flip side is stagnation, this feeling of being unproductive and totally self-absorbed. And finally, in our later years, we face the last conflict, integrity versus despair. This is the time for looking back on the whole journey. You ask yourself, did I live a life I'm proud of? Finding that satisfaction and meaning leads to integrity and the great virtue of wisdom. But a life that feels full of regrets, well, that can lead to despair. So there you have it, the entire human journey in 8 stages. It's a really compelling story, isn't it? But is it actually true? How well does Erikson's map really hold up today? Well, critics have raised some really important questions. For starters, the whole theory is really hard to test with hard data. Some people argue its stages fit boys better than girls, and that it's way too focused on childhood, kind of rushing through the massive complexities of adult life. It's also been pointed out that identity isn't always locked in when you're a teenager. People can and do reinvent themselves much later in life. Okay, so with all of those criticisms, why are we still talking about this theory? Why does this map, even if it has some flaws, still matter so much? Well, it's because even his harshest critics often admit that the theory gives us an incredibly useful framework. As one analysis puts it, it's a powerful way to make sense of our own life stories and the lives of everyone around us. And that, right there, is the crucial point. Erikson gave us a shared language. Think about terms like identity crisis or midlife crisis to talk about some of the most profound and personal challenges we all face. It's not a perfect map, but it's an amazing tool for understanding and a great framework for conversation. So the real takeaway here isn't about whether this map is 100% accurate for every single person on the planet. It's about using it to look at your own journey. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Looking at this map of life, which great conflict are you navigating right now?